What's going on, guys? Stainless steel fuel tank build starts now. Alright guys, so here's our stainless steel fuel tank. We've got it set up on our pipe rollers here. I think that's going to be the easiest way for us to weld it out. So I'm going to give you guys a quick walkthrough on where the tank sits right now and what work needs to be done for us to get this completed for the customer. So let's do a walkthrough real quick. Alright, so on this tank, this is going to be the discharge fitting. So that's already on there. The customer had someone else start the work on this and then they weren't able to finish it. So it looks like he was using stick to weld these fittings on. If you come to this end, so this will be the fill port here. And it looks like it was welded with stick as well. So the previous guy started to fit this up. So we're gonna have to go through and kind of clean this up. I'm not sure what he had going here. It looks like he was using a dog and a wedge. But it's kind of tough because he's got an open corner here and then here it's flush, so I may have to start over on that. I don't know, we'll see what it looks like. He did cut a relief here and I think that's because he was having trouble getting it fit up round. You can see there's quite a bit here, and by the time we get this pulled into place, it's definitely going to have some tension on it. That's also one reason that I would rather have an open corner the whole way, because you're fighting yourself by not giving yourself that much more space to work with. So I may end up having to cut this off and refit it. Yeah, it's flush here too. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just cut these tacks that he's got where he tacked it flush and leave the ones where he's got it tacked open corner and just try to fix it from there. So there's definitely some challenges associated with this one. We'll see what we can do. I did get the piece for this end from the customer, so I'm going to see how that goes. If I need to trim that a little bit on the burn table, I can. That's just one more reason that if you take something like this to somebody who has the equipment, obviously you're going to get a better finished product because... And you know, I feel for somebody who's trying to do a job like this that doesn't have all the equipment. But I do think there's something to be said for if you take something like this to somebody who does have the equipment to do it, it's going to be a lot easier for them to do it. It's going to take them less time. And if they know what they're doing, the finished product is going to be a lot better because they have the equipment that allows them to get the job done easier and make it look better. So just a little food for thought on this one. I want to try to start at that end and get that whole situation figured out with what we got going on down there. So we'll get all set up. I'll come back to you and tell you guys what I'm thinking. All right, guys, so here's what I've decided to do. I turned this on the rollers, a full rotation. I've looked at what work was done here, and I'm not sure why he went flush on part of it, an open corner on part of it, but I'm pretty sure if he'd have gone open corner on the whole thing, it would have fit the way it should, and he wouldn't have had to cut this relief. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave this section here that's about 6-8 inches long, and then I'm going to go through and I'm going to cut the tacks on the whole rest of the thing, clean it up, grind all his tack and weld off there, and I'm just going to start over. I just think it's going to be easier. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab a zip disc, and I'm just going to start cutting these tacks, and I'm going to use the flap disc to start grinding all these tack marks off from where he had his dog and wedge on here. So when I get this to the point where I've got it all cut apart and cleaned up, I'll come back to you guys, give you guys a look. Alright guys, so we've got this pretty much cut loose, except for this section that has a decent open corner. I've taken and built a tool to help me fit this. So I built a dog here. This is called a dog. I've taken a scrap piece of 1/2 inch stainless. I did use grade 8 bolt and nut as my driver piece on there. And the reason I did that, I didn't use a stainless bolt because they're more likely to gall, and I don't want to have to be cutting this off every 3rd or 4th time I use it because it's galled up. And sometimes you put a lot of pressure on these when you're trying to fit a tank like this. So if you use a mild steel bolt and some anti-seize, chances are it's going to hold up a lot longer than a stainless steel bolt and nut. So we're going to take our dog here. I'll bring you in close and show you guys how this is going to work. All right, so right here, you can see that our joint is pretty close to flush. I don't have an open corner like I do back here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this dog and I'm going to push it close to that edge there, and I'm going to tack this on so that the bolt, when I drive the bolt down, it's going to hit the plate, this plate, and it will drive the pipe up. That will give me my open corner. Once I get that drove up, I'll go ahead and put a tack on this, and then I'll just keep moving. So I'll work my way around the pipe. There's more than one way to do this, but this is just the way we're going to do it on this one. Another way, you can use a dog that's like the L-shaped dog like I've showed you before. It's kind of like the shape of Utah. And then you can tack that on there, and then you can use a wedge and drive the wedge between the two, and that will do the same thing. But for stuff like this where you have to be really delicate and it's a really tight work area, I like to use this style of dog. I'm probably going to go ahead and get the arc captain set up over here, and we'll go ahead and get this tacked up with that. So I'm going to go ahead and get the machine set up. We'll come back over and see if we can't start getting this bit up. Alright guys, so I got the Arc Captain 205 TIG Pro hooked up. I'm running my Furic cup on there. This is a number 10. No, this is a number 12 Furic cup here. I like this because it's got the finger control. So this will be good for fitting up this tank. So I'm going to go ahead and tack this on now, and then we can go ahead and start fitting this tank. We'll just work in a circle and see if we can't get this to fit right. When you do this, you want to get your tack closer to the bolt. Otherwise, it's just going to snap the tack. I'm going to start with only a tack on one side and see if that'll hold. It'll be a lot nicer if I only have to clean up one tack. If I have to do both sides, then I'll have to zip it off. But I think one tack will probably hold it if we're just working our way around. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. From your angle, it probably looks like there's a fair amount of daylight right there, but if you look at it straight on, those corners are buttoned up just like we want them to. So I'll go ahead and put a tack here, And then we'll bust this off and we'll just keep working our way counterclockwise. One of the things you want to do is make sure that the plate stays tight against the corner too, because sometimes when you drive this down, the plate will want to walk out on you. So it's always a good idea to make sure you smack that in when you do tack it. If you do it while the tack's still hot, you shouldn't have any issue with it bumping back in where you want it to. Okay, so we'll pull our bolt back out. We'll take our hammer. Bust that off. These TIG tacks are a lot easier to clean up than like a stick tack or dual shield tack or something like that. So I gotta switch my pipe rollers so that we're rolling the other direction. You can actually get this process going pretty smooth, pretty quick. At this point it's still going pretty smooth. I'm gonna go about every 5 inches, see if I can get away with that. It's always a good idea to drive your bolt down so you know where it's going to hit before you tack it. So I got my welder set at 150 amps. So one of our tacks on the other side just broke. I think our dog is going to break. So I may have to add a second tack on this. One of the other complications we're running into is that the pipe is not round. It's oblong, so things are going really smooth so far where we've only got a quarter of it fit. When you start getting to that last third or quarter of the fit, that's usually when things start getting a little bit more difficult. So we'll just keep on trucking. I'm gonna go ahead and zip these tacks off, bust this loose, move it. This is kind of the process. I won't bore you guys with this because it's pretty time consuming, but I'll just keep working my way. When I get towards the end, if it doesn't look good, I'll give you an update just to tell you guys what my next plan is. But sometimes if the fitment is not perfect, you might have to go back, zip a few tacks, and then change how far your open corner extends out. You might have to go a little bit more shallow, or you might have to take a little bit more of a gap. We'll just see what happens. So I'm gonna keep working this. When I get towards the end, come back and give you an update. All right guys, so I just got the last tack on this end of our pipe, and I just wanted to show you guys, like I said before, this pipe is oblong. It's not perfectly concentric. So because it's not perfectly round, there were certain places where instead of having to push the pipe out, I had to push it down. So to do that, I ended up using my Fireball tool bar clamp, and you can put some serious pressure on these clamps. So I just took a piece of 1x2 by 1/8 inch rec tube, and I went ahead and used that. The thing I like about these clamps is if you need to pull something that's 12 feet long, if you have a 12-foot piece of bar clamp, you can do it. So it's pretty handy the way these work. And this was a game changer on this piece because it was kind of a challenge to refit this where there was already some tacks on there and the fitment wasn't great before. And this relief, the relief, I'll show you guys, I'll give you guys an up close look. The relief didn't need to be there. So I'll take this off, and then I'll show you guys what we got. Okay, so our fitment looks good now. These tacks here are a lot easier to buff off. Small little TIG tacks. You can see we've got a nice open corner around the whole thing. It's nice and even. I'm probably going to get some dual shield wire and weld this up with dual shield. But I did want to show you guys this relief. So you can see it's almost perfect. It's almost perfectly parallel the whole way. And if I feel this with my finger, it just didn't need to be there. The only reason that he had to do that was because his fitment was not right. He had flush on one side and open corner on the other. And the other thing I want to point out, I found this stamp, and it says right here 32 inches ID. If you pull a tape across this piece of plate, it's exactly 32 inches across. If he would have seen that and pulled that measurement, he would have known that all he needed to do was an open corner around the whole thing, and that would give him exactly the fitment he needed to be able to fit this up and make it round again. So I just wanted you guys to be able to learn from that. So that side's all fit up. We got tacks every 4 or 5 inches. Now I'll show you guys how out and round this end is. Hopefully you can see that. So this end's going to be a treat too, but we'll be able to work our way around just like we did on the last one. I'm going to get everything set up on this other end, and then we'll go from there. All right guys, little update. I've got my end cap here, and I've got it rigged up with the crane. Now normally, if you don't have a crane and you've got to fit something like this, it can be kind of a challenge. So what I've done is I've tacked my dog on the front of this plate. You could tack a lift and eye or whatever. I just tacked the dog on there, and then I'm going to use the crane to hold this in place while I get a tack on this to get us started. This is one of those deals where if you don't have a second hand and you don't have a crane, it can be a challenge. So I'm going to try to get a tack on this. So if I can get 2 tacks on it, that would be stellar. And I think I can get another one on right here. So I'm just kind of trying to twist this and rotate it to where I'm getting just the right open corner. Now I'm going to put a pretty good tack on this. So that gives me a starting point so that I can start working my way around. I'm going to give you guys a head-on look here so you can kind of get a perspective of how out of round this is. So when my buddy brought it over to me, I kind of thought that it was a little worse. He mentioned that it was pretty far out of round. This is not the worst I've ever dealt with. I've actually dealt with a lot worse than this, so I was actually pretty pleased once I saw this. So I'll give you guys a look. So, you know, it's out about 3/4 of an inch on either side, and it is out around, but that's nothing you can't pull in with some dogs and some good fireball clamps. So we'll go ahead and we'll keep fitting this end. Once I get it all fit up, we'll come back to you and give you a look. All right guys, let's give you an update real quick on what's going on here. So I did get this end of the tank welded out. I am going to get some video for you guys on the other end of how I did it and what my method is to be able to fill this open corner in. So I'll give you guys a look. This end is not going to look near as good as that end is because this is the end that that other guy fit up, and I had to clean up a lot of his gouges and flaws and stuff like that that are in the plate. So this end's not going to look as good as that end, but let's give you guys a look. So it still turned out pretty good. I'm happy with it. But you can see there are some flaws. Those aren't, I don't know if you can see it, they're just like little nicks. I filled a lot of them in, but there are some little nicks and stuff, and I'm sure they look deeper on camera. Anything that was real deep, I went ahead and tacked it up and then buffed it off. You can see he's got all these gouges from where his zip disc hit when he was trying to fit it up. But I've gone over it 2 or 3 times, and anywhere that I felt was questionable, I went ahead and cleaned it up. So when this is all said and done, I'm gonna go ahead and pressure test the tank just so I know that there's no leaks. The next thing I wanna do, while I'm here, I've got the Arc Captain TIG 205 Pro set up. Since I've got the machine already set up and out here, I'm gonna go ahead and use it. And I'm gonna run another pass on this. And you can see they're not straight. And there are some pinholes in this. And I don't really like the way that looks. This tank is not gonna be pressurized. It's just a fuel tank, but I don't like the way that looks. So I'm gonna run a cap over the top of that. And I'm gonna use the Arc Captain TIG 205 Pro. So we'll go ahead and run that now, and then I'll give you guys a look. I'm just gonna walk the cup on this. It's not a real heavy pass. I'm using 332 316 stainless TIG rod. And then I like to brush my stainless when I'm done. There's some slag left on that. I think that's why it was popping. Okay, so I think that looks a lot better. I feel a lot better about that. It's a good sound weld. There's no pinholes. So that's good. The Arc Captain ran good. So now that that's knocked out, we'll go down to that other end and I'll show you guys how I've been welding these ends up. All right, so there's a couple things I want to point out here. Okay, so the first thing I want to point out, if you look at these tacks, they're not real massive, and the most important thing is they're convex. So they protrude past the surface. They're not concave, so I'm not going to have to dig with the grinder to get the tack mark out. So that's one of the reasons I like fitting up a tank like this with TIG. And then I've got my little stitches here all the way around. You can see our open corner turned out good all the way around. But you want your tacks to be small, but you want them to protrude past the surface. If they're digging big marks, which is part of the problem with tack and stuff like this with stainless stick, is it will usually burn a crater, and if it leaves a crater, then you got to fill it back up and grind it off. So that's one of the benefits of using tack to fit a tank like this. Okay, so the next thing I want to walk through with you guys is how I weld this open corner. So I've got my positioner dialed in to where the speed is about perfect, to where I can sit and weld this right here where I'm comfortable and where I'm welding basically in the flat position. If I take my wire here and I were just to hold it 90 degrees from the weld and just hold it like that, as long as my gap is good and my joint is perfect, it's probably gonna fill in there nice and pretty and I'll have no issues. But if it's not, there's a spot down here where there's a little bit of a gap. So hopefully you can see that, but right here, there's a little bit of a gap. If I'm holding my wire right there, there's a good chance that my wire can blow through. What I'll do is I'll actually take and tip my gun back this way, and I'll be running my pipe rollers counterclockwise. So it's gonna be spinning that way. So basically what that's like is it's like dragging your wire. So I'll tip my gun towards the puddle so that I'm driving the wire towards the puddle, and it kind of pushes the puddle up to these corners and lets it fill in nice and neat. So we'll go ahead and run a section here. I'll let you guys watch me so you can understand what I'm talking about, and then we'll give you guys a look. All right, so this wire is 045 dual shield 316 stainless wire, and I'm running it 24.8 volts on this joint. It's probably on the cold side, but it's very fluid wire and it flows in there good. It's still plenty hot. It's getting a good fusion weld, but I like to run it a little bit colder when I'm dragging it and when I'm running an open corner. That way it fills in. So where I've got my speed dialed, as long as I keep my angle correct, I can just hold it right where I need it. Make sure I'm filling in my open corner. So far I'm running just about perfect. Had a little bump there where it ran over the seam on the pipe rollers. See, there's a little bit of gap right here. But where I'm driving my wire back into my puddle, it just fills in nice, keeps on going. Okay, so I just ran maybe 2 feet there. So I'm going to back this up. I'll hit it with a wire wheel and I'll show you guys what it looks like. Okay, so this is without any cleanup with a flap disc. This is just weld and hit it with a wire wheel. So this is what it looks like. So it fills in just about perfect. So we'll go all the way around the tank, just like that. That should give us a nice solid weld. So I'm going to go ahead, finish welding this out, and then I'll come back to you guys when I'm getting it all cleaned up. All right, guys, we got that end all done, cleaned up. So the next thing I want to show you, where the guy cut the relief in this, we need to gouge this out and weld it up. I am going to use dual shield, but you want to be careful with something like this. Stainless welds really fluid. And so if we gouge this out too much, it's going to blow through. So we want to go just enough, but not too much. So I'll go ahead and grab a hard disc. I'll start gouging this out, and then I'll show you guys about what the gouge looks like on this, about where I like it when I'm welding it with dual shield. All right, guys, hopefully you can see that. That's about, I'd say, 3/4 of the way through the plate. It's a pretty tight gap. It's actually a pretty tight gap. It looks tighter than it is because I just gouged it. It's pretty much a 1/16, I'd say. I'm going to keep my rod angle this way, and I'm actually going to push it. We'll go ahead and weld this out, and then I'll show you guys what it looks like. Okay, turned out pretty good. You can see right there at the end, it's still nice and puddled up. So I'll be able to buff this flat, and hopefully you'll never be able to tell once I'm done. So I'll go ahead and hit that with a flap disc, and then I'll probably hit it with a Scotch-Brite pad, and it'll just be extra shiny right there. So that's going to be it as far as the fabrication. So the only thing left is the customer has 2 pick and eyes that he wants welded on the top of the tank. So I've actually got to rotate it 180 degrees, and then I'll show you guys how I'm going to find top dead center on my tank, and we'll go ahead and get those tacked on. That's probably going to be about it for tonight. I got to go in the house and eat dinner and shower and get ready for tomorrow. So that's going to be it for tonight. We'll catch up with you guys when we're ready to weld some pick and eyes on. Just to give you guys an update, I did burn some pick and eyes out of some 1/4 inch 316 stainless plate. We're going to go ahead and get this laid out. I'm having a little bit of trouble getting my tank leveled up. And the reason for that is the fill port and the drain port are not level with each other. So they're a little bit out. So if I have this one level, this one's out of level. If I have this one level, that one's out of level. I tried splitting between the two, splitting the difference, and I didn't really like that idea because the bottom is more important. This is basically just an auxiliary tank, so this will fuel a large generator. This will just basically siphon feed to the generator. So it's more important that the drain port is level so that we can get the tank empty than it is the top. The top is basically just a breather and a fill port. So what I've decided to do, I've got the fitting on the bottom of the tank level. That does put this one a little bit out of level. We're just gonna have to deal with it. So that's what we're gonna do. So now that I've got my tank level, I'm gonna go ahead and take a centering head. So I'll grab my centering head and I'll show you guys what I'm gonna do here. So I'll go ahead and grab my centering head and I'll show you guys what we're gonna do. Alright, so I know you guys have seen this before on my channel, but I do want to show you guys what a centering head is. If you don't know, this is what they look like. Hopefully you can see that. There's some angles around here. So you can set this on a piece of pipe or round stock, and then you set your angle, and then you're able to level this up. This is used for a lot of things. You can set increments on different degrees of a round object like a pipe. It's also for finding top dead center, which is what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna set my angle here to 90 degrees. So I'll set this on top of the pipe. I'll make sure it's level, and then I'll hit this with the hammer, and that will leave me a little center pop right where top dead center is. Then I can take and mark another one and draw a line between the two, and then I'll know exactly where I need to mount my pick and eye for this tank. So we'll go ahead and do that now. All right, so if I set my centering head on here, you can see the bubbles out of level. So I'm just gonna scoot this over till the bubble is perfectly level. Then I'll take my hammer, tap that. I've got a mark there. Then I'll come further down the tank here. Then if I come further down the tank here and do the same thing, hit that. Now I'll grab a straight edge and I'll make my mark. Okay, so you can see our line there. So I'll pull a measurement from the end of the tank out to probably the edge of where I want my pick and eye. I'll set that right on my center line there, and then I'll tack that up and weld it out. This is going to be the same thing for both sides, so I'll go ahead and knock out that other side, get my line on there, get the welder all set up, and then we'll come back when we're ready to tack these up. Okay, I pulled my tape 24 inches off the end. Trying to be gentle here because I don't want to roll my tank out of level. right, guys. Tank is done. Give you guys a look. So I think that wraps up the tank. There is still a piece to this puzzle. We're gonna have to build a cradle for this tank. And it's probably gonna sit, it's not gonna sit very high, but we do have to build a cradle for it. I'm gonna do that in a separate video. So that's probably gonna wrap this one up. Another piece of advice that I would give you that's been on my mind lately: don't ever be so prideful that you're not willing to ask questions or watch someone else work. You don't have to do everything that they do. You don't have to do it the way that they do it. But it's always a good thing if you can watch someone else work. You can take a few things from what they do and you can mix it up with what you do and create your own style. But you have to be humble enough to be able to learn from someone else and ask questions, so that you do have that opportunity to learn. So I would just throw that out there. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys learned something. Thank you for watching as always. See you on the next one.